Hi, my name is Larry Fleury, and we're here with Let's Talk About It. And what are we talking about today? Today we're talking about weather, more specifically storm chasing. It's one of my passions. I love it. Something that affects everybody in the entire planet, especially us here in Northwest Arkansas and Bella Vista. Something that gives me a lot of excitement and hope is that we're still in winter, but we're preparing for spring. And while spring is around the corner, this week with the National Weather Service, it's actually Storm Preparedness Week. What does that mean? We want to be prepared for the heavy storms before they get here. So that's why we're preparing for tornadoes, floods, lightning, all the crazy things that spring brings to us every year, especially for those of us who live here in Northwest Arkansas, especially Bella Vista. Something I'm really passionate about going back to my high school days was storm chasing, just looking out my window. I remember getting my driver's license and wanting to go out there into the world and chase these storms. I picked up a camera, and as you can see, I was capturing lightning at night and crazy looking clouds in the daytime. Anytime the storms would blow through, it was something that I was passionate about because it was a climate that's always changing. It's always different, and it brought me a lot of joy. There is a destructive side, though, behind these storms. A few years ago, I had the honor of giving a TED Talk at the University of Tulsa. And during that time, I was able to discuss the dangers and kind of the ethics of storm chasing. And when that happened, it was a phenomenal experience. I had a great time, very nervous, of course. But the biggest thing I talked about was tornadoes aren't the most dangerous things when it comes to storms, because tornadoes are kind of rare when it comes to severe storms. The number one killer when it comes to severe weather is actually flooding. Flooding surpasses lightning and tornado casualties by far, because people just kind of put it to the side. And those of us who live near the Little Sugar Creek understand when flood season comes, it could be a little disastrous when you see the weatherman with a severe flood warning or flash flood warning. So always be prepared, and that's what we're here to talk about today. A little bit more about my background is I'm a photographer first and foremost. It's a huge passion of mine, and I've always been attracted towards the nature element of it. And people really seem to gravitate towards that photography. And I think having more of us out there capture these storms not only helps the community and documentation of these storms, but also helps the scientists and meteorologists behind this. Back in 2008, in my college days at Pittsburgh State University, only a couple hours north of here, I had the honor of starting my degree in environmental geography. And that's kind of one of the paths that got me started on understanding storms and why I wanted to, pursue them to some degree. Moving forward, I ended up focusing a lot on marketing and promoting the excitement of storms and winter weather. But to this day, I still get out in my car, and anytime a severe storm is on the radar, I'm out there prepared. The more people that are out there and about, the more storm chasers we have, the better. There's never too many people out there spotting, because the more spotters, the more accurate forecast we get. When you look at Doppler radar, sometimes you don't know if there's actually a tornado on the ground or if it's just circulation. And having someone out there spotting is a super helpful thing. So it's a very exciting time. I've had a great time going out there, but the number one precaution is safety. So how do you get involved? You could join the National Weather Service Storm Spotter classes. It's through a company called Skywarn. And Skywarn is this great thing that the National Weather Service puts together in every community. Mostly firefighters and emergency managers sign up to do it, but you get a lot of enthusiasts like myself signing up, trying to learn more. So you'll see those pop up in the times of February, before we get to March, April, May, when these storms start to pick up. So I encourage you to go on the National Weather Service website and go online and look up Skywarn and find a class nearest you, because again, the more people that are out there, the better. Today I would like to also talk about some fun facts about different weather that happens. We've mentioned tornadoes, we mentioned flooding, but here's some fun facts I think that will be very intriguing to you. Lightning is one of the most amazing things that happens in our atmosphere, and it does a lot of crazy cool things. And one thing you may not know is that lightning's always trying to get from the fastest point A to point B place in the quickest amount of time. And you're asking, well, isn't the quickest way a straight line? Yes, of course. But due to how our atmosphere is built, you have these cold pockets of air. So when lightning's striking, it's actually weaving through those cold pockets of air. So that's why lightning has this squiggly look to it. Lightning's always trying to move in a straight line, but you can actually see these pockets of air based off the formation of the lightning. That's something that's always fascinated me. Another thing is lightning obviously is created by positive and negative electrons, like a magnet attracting. Now, the biggest thing with lightning is those positives and negatives. It takes a lot of energy to get there. It gets a lot of energy to get there. So we focus on cloud-to-cloud lightning initially before we even see cloud-to-ground lightning. And you just need electrons. Sometimes people think, well, a storm's coming. There's lightning in the big storms, of course. But sometimes a volcano may erupt, and due to all these electrons building from the volcano eruption, you'll see lightning pop out of the volcano. It's a pretty wild phenomenon. And when it comes to safety and lightning, I definitely encourage you, if you hear thunder and you don't see any clouds, you still got to move to safety. So lightning can move for 30 miles away, even if the sky looks clear. If there's a storm 30 miles away and those electrons are building up due to the cold atmosphere above and the warm atmosphere below, building up and that friction pushing together. So something to always be aware of if you're out there. Take cover, obviously. And as someone who lives in Bella Vista and an avid golfer myself, I have to be very vigilant on what's going on out there when severe season, pokes around. Before I move any further, I want to say, if you are interested in volunteering for Bella Vista Community Television, feel free to visit us at bvctv.org, and you're more than welcome to come by, check out the show here in Bella Vista. Sign up and volunteer. There's a lot of opportunity to check things out. I just want to thank everyone who has volunteered and thank our donors, our sponsors, and everyone. Please jump on in and dive on in. So it's a great programming thing, and we always need your help. So moving forward, I would like to talk about hail. And hail. It's always a fun thing to talk about, but the most fascinating thing about hail is it's always moving up into the cloud and then falling down. So just to give you a quick science lesson, a tornado or a severe storm is built up from warm air pushing up all this moisture. So you see these huge clouds in the summertime. And when those clouds are being built, you have this tiny water droplet goes up in the atmosphere, it freezes, and it gets heavy and it falls. But then the wind's pushing so far up in that storm that it blows right back up, freezes again, and falls. So if you ever see a piece of hail and it looks kind of big, go out there, cut it in half. It'll have rings. And the rings of that hail piece tells you how many times it traveled up and down in that storm. I think that's absolutely amazing. It gives us an eye into the storm that we can't physically see ourselves. Kind of like tree rings, when you cut them in half, you can see how old a tree is. Same thing with hail rings. It tells you how many times it's traveled and how old that piece of hail is and how powerful that storm is. So if you ever see giant hail, it's obviously a very powerful storm because it's big enough to push these giant hail pieces up and down multiple times. So there's a lot of vortice, a lot of turning. In my next slide, you'll see kind of a sheer cloud of, this is what we call a hail shaft. So that greenness to the storm, this is a photo I took, that greenness, those are hail. It kind of gives it, because the ice and the melting and the atmosphere and the dirt all mixed into those hail pieces, creates kind of a greenish glow. So that's why in like the movies Twister, they always say, hey, the clouds are green. We want to focus on getting to that storm and capturing photos of it because they know there's circulation in there. So if you ever hear there's hail in a storm, just know there's circulation in a storm. So moving forward, be precautious of that, especially when you're watching a local meteorologist. There's a lot of great ones around here. No matter the station you're watching, I always say tune in to whoever you feel comfortable with because they all do a fantastic job. In my next slide, I also want to talk about what a shelf cloud is. A shelf cloud, if you ever see something like this is a sign of a huge front approaching. These are clouds kind of warped up in the circulation, and it's a sign of usually a squall line, and behind the squall lines are usually heavy winds, lots of rain, some hail. They call these bowing effects. You see kind of bows in the atmosphere. I took this outside of Joplin, Missouri one year, and there was a lot of hail and rain behind that, and a lot of heavy winds. And we're used to a lot of heavy winds here in northwest Arkansas, so it's something not out of the ordinary. Speaking of those shelf clouds, moving forward, I'm going to show you what a roll cloud is. On our next slide, we have a roll cloud. So these clouds are really wild to look at, very cool. Sometimes they're connected to the storm, like a shelf cloud. Sometimes they're disconnected and roll ahead of the storm. And it's usually because the air's blowing and creating this weird circular pattern. Either way, you can tell there's a lot of chaotic energy happening in the atmosphere. So this spring, March, April, May, June, keep your eye out in the skies because you're going to see storms like this. Something else I want to talk about is how tornadoes are formed. In our next slide, you can kind of see the beginnings of a wall cloud of sorts. So this is a shelf cloud. You can see some rain in the background. That rain, there's a lot of energy blowing up and the rain falling back down, and it's creating this huge storm system. Very powerful. Sometimes they call these storm clouds motherships because of the way they look like aliens and spacecrafts, but there's just a lot of turbulence going on in there. So something that's very unique about those clouds is you could see how much energy is putting in there. So in my next slide, you could see how much energy is being pushed up, and it creates this circular energy. And you can see it looks very much so like a alien spacecraft. I took this outside of Kansas, actually, a few years ago. And so the air's going up, and it's trying to come down, and it creates this system called a mesocyclone. Now, a mesocyclone is just circulation of the cloud going up and up and up. That's why those big cumulonimbus storm clouds, the big bubbly ones, build up. Those are creating a lot of circulation inside. So that's why when you're flying an airliner and they have to fly through these, there's a lot of turbulence around these storms. And we always want to avoid going inside of them if you are in an aircraft. But and if you're living nearby, you're welcome to go outside, check them out, and get a really cool show. But obviously take safety first. On my next slide, this was taken in Joplin, Missouri, right near downtown. Everyone remembers in 2011 the Joplin tornado. This wasn't from that specific storm, but Joplin is an area that is primed for tornadoes due to it being near the I-44 corridor. It's kind of a flat area, meets the mountains of the Ozarks, so it creates a lot of turbulence from the landscape, as well as we're center of the country, so you're getting warm air from Mexico, cool air from Canada, and during these springtime hours and days, we're getting that mix of cool mornings and warm afternoons, and if there's any precipitation and humidity, it's going to create these big storms and chaotic, whereas in the late summer, we're not going to see as aggressive a storm because later in the summer, there's just too much heat, there's not enough moisture, there's not enough cool air to create these massive storms, not until we get back into the fall season. So spring and fall are kind of the big seasons for us to get storms when you get closer to Canada, North Dakota, Iowa, that center of the summertime, June, July, August. That's when you're going to see most of your storms because the cool air still exists up there in that time of year. Again, this is another reminder. Make sure you're following us online at bvctv.org. And it's a great time to volunteer. It's a great time to start of the year. Spring's around the corner, as I said. So not only are you keeping an eye out on the weather, you keep an eye out here locally. You can watch us on Roku, all online, on YouTube. So lots of cool things coming up. And while we're there, let's give ourselves a little break, and we'll be right back after this message. And we are back with Let's Talk About It, and we are talking about storm chasing. It's super exciting. We've already covered hail, we've covered lightning, we covered tornadoes, and we touched base on some of the flooding. That's something I want to talk about a little bit more. Flooding is one of those things people don't think about it's nothing on their radar, I suppose. When it comes to flooding, you hear about it in insurance. People say, yeah, I have flood insurance, I don't need it. People think about I live on a hill. I don't need to worry about it. I don't live in a flood zone. But when it comes to flash flooding and all these creeks and rivers around us, there's a lot of moments when the atmosphere just drops a ton of rain, just absolute ton of rain. And these little creeks and rivers, they can't handle it, and they overflow into our streets and systems. And if any of our sewage systems ever get backed up and clogged, then our roads get flooded, and it becomes a huge nightmare. We've seen this happen in certain drought climates as well. If it's super droughtful, the ground's not picking up the water as aggressively, so it just kind of flows on top of it and creates even worse flood conditions. So April is usually the biggest time we see flooding. As someone who lives in Bella Vista, we see Tanyard Creek, we see Pinion Creek, we see all these waterfalls around here. They start to pick up due to all the extra water in the lakes, start to overflow into those waterfalls. It's an exciting time, it's a beautiful time, but always proceed with caution around rising waters. I always go with the old saying, turn around, don't drown, when you see waters rising, if you're driving. So if you see water that's more than 2 or 3 inches and it's moving quickly, it's usually safer to turn around. We've seen moving water up to 4 or 5 inches move 3-ton, pickups. So you never know, unless you have super equipped vehicles and you're aware of how the water conditions are in that area and you have good grips on your tires. Putting all these things together, sometimes it's best to just turn around, especially for the layperson who's not chasing. So take a detour to work if you see that. Something else I would like to encourage everybody to look into is going online, checking out weather.gov, checking out your local forecasts. Because I know weatherman and weather personalities, they get a lot of hate sometimes because, hey, you said it was going to rain, and it didn't rain. What the heck? Well, that's an interesting thing because when it comes to predicting weather, it's a very difficult thing because you're shoving all these things into a formula of humidity, temperature, wind, and things that are coming our way based off of different calculations in the atmosphere, and you have to build a report based off of it. And even the smallest change in that could change the whole outcome of what's to come. Now, they're very accurate, and the science has gotten better due to computers and computational physics, blah, 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 super boring stuff, right? But over time, you realize these weather people give us so much information so quick. I mean, imagine 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, people say, hey, it's going to snow in 2 days, but it's 70 degrees today. They would think you're out of your mind, but if it did, they'd think you're a witch doctor. So moving forward, I always give credit to all the meteorologists out there, and it's a very exciting thing for them. So if they say it's going to be a 50% chance of showers, it usually means there's a 50% chance of rain for that area, not just your house in Bentonville or Bella Vista up on the hill in Highlands, but there's a 50% chance of like a 70% chance of that region. So they have to give you some indication because otherwise it could be even more inaccurate. So this is so far the most statistical accurate way to go about it. With that being said, this is a good reminder that winter is not over. It is still winter until March 20th. So we still have, it may feel warm today, it may feel warm tomorrow. You get these kind of a false springtime things, which does bring some of these crazy spring showers. But we could have a cold front coming through, and you have a few days where it's back in the 30s, and we could have snow in the forecast. So I've seen snow happen in the middle of April. Who hasn't? So it's always best to not assume that spring is here already and be prepared for all sorts of weather this time of year. So this is kind of the most exciting time to live in Northwest Arkansas and Bella Vista because you may have snow in the forecast one day, you may have high winds the next, you may have severe weather and tornadoes, you may have a beautiful sunny and 75 day ahead. So lots of cool things to take in and absorb here in Northwest Arkansas when it comes to weather. Lastly, I want to encourage you to sign up to be a storm spotter for the National Weather Service. I mentioned Skywarn earlier. If you haven't signed up, go on to weather.gov or go onto Google and type in NWS Skywarn and look up your local area. For us in Bella Vista, it might be for Benton County. They might have it somewhere locally. A class, sometimes they do it online. especially back in the COVID days. So being prepared, knowing what to look for, because there's certain things called like scud clouds, basically. And if you're not trained, you may think, oh my gosh, that looks like a tornado. That looks like a scary storm. But a scud cloud is just extra moisture, and you see these kind of scary-looking clouds blowing in the atmosphere, or you'll have these cold weather funnels. It looks like a tornado, but it's just the way the air is turning around it, and it's not really harmful. But it's a great way to learn what's what on radar, what's what in visual, and the more people that are out there and the more people that are trained make for better forecasting, more eyes on the ground. And if you see something, you're able to call 911. If you're a ham radio operator, I know Bella Vista has a great ham radio network. You're able to call that into the National Weather Service station, and they can make those warnings very quickly. So your contribution can actually have a real impact on how people get these watches and warnings. Speaking of watches and warnings, it's one of my favorite things to talk about because it's one of the most confusing things people get confused about, and there's a miscommunication there. So a watch is, let's say a tornado watch specifically, means the ingredients are there to make a tornado. It could be a perfect, sunny, beautiful day, but you could still have a tornado watch. That just means be prepared, be on watch, be on the lookout. Whereas a tornado warning means there is an active tornado happening right now. And if it's radar indicated, that just means there's a lot of rotation. And if it's spotter indicated, that means someone saw it on the ground. It has more confirmation, more weight to it. So I like to say, if you're ever talking to your kids about watches versus warnings, a watch is like you're going to make cookies. You have all the ingredients. You have the flour. It's all on the counter, but there's no cookies yet. You haven't made anything. Whereas a warning is it's in the oven. Cookies are happening. It's being prepared. So you could say a cookie watch or a cookie warning when it comes to that. It's a good way to educate people who may not know exactly what that means. Because I hear people say, oh, I heard there's a tornado watch. It doesn't look like it. It looks like a great day. They're just getting that confused. And I could see that sometimes people think, a tornado watch. I'm watching out. I don't see anything. So a watch just means be prepared. The ingredients are there. We saw that recently with our winter storm watches, which meant there was a lot of ice on the ground or ice on its way, whereas a warning meant it's actively snowing. We have a winter storm that's actively here. So watches versus warnings, be prepared this season. And this is also another good time I want to bring up again. If you haven't volunteered yet, please swing by the Bella Vista Community Television Station. We love to have people come down here, check out what this is all about. We love to build an audience down here, see what the show is all about. The more people that are down here, the better. We want to get you educated and learning what's going on. So if you're watching this, tell your friends, tell 3 friends to watch this show and all the shows. We have a great programming here at BVC TV, and you can learn more at bvctv.org. To jump back into the weather stuff, I want to tell you a scary story that happened to me a few years ago. I was probably, 7 years ago. I knew a lot about storm chasing, but I found myself in a scary situation. I saw a potential storm brewing up on the radar, and I was like, I'm going to go out there. I was prepared, and I could see the formation happening. I was in Kansas, the Kansas-Oklahoma line, and as I see this formation, I could see some circulation forming. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm right in front of this sucker. So I started turning around and driving very quickly, and in my rearview mirror, I could just see this dark wave of storm behind me. And I pull into this Christmas tree farm parking lot real quick and put the car in park. And all of a sudden, it starts raining, hailing, the car's shifting and moving very aggressively. It's so dark, very scary time. That was about 5 minutes worth of shaking, and things calmed down very quickly after that. I turned out of the parking lot and looked on the road ahead. Every power line was down, every tree was down. Super scary situation. I found some homes that were nearby where their roofs were damaged. It wasn't a tornado. It was actually a microburst, according to the National Weather Service, which is like a tornado. Instead of circulation, it's wind just slamming down from the cloud and spreading outwards very aggressively, very quickly. And those are just as scary. So I was able, luckily, to help out some people who had some damage, and I always carry a chainsaw in my vehicle when I'm out storm chasing for if there's trees in the road or what have you. But being weather aware in that moment allowed me not to keep driving and knowing that I had to pull over. So pulling over allowed me to avoid danger. So if you find yourself in a situation where there's a severe storm, I warn you to take safety precautions. This brings me to another myth with storm chasing. Let's say you see a tornado and you're on the highway. They say pull under a bridge. The bridge is the safest place to be because you've seen a video and the bridge is safe. Unfortunately, that is not true. There have been videos where people have gotten very, very fortunate. They went under the bridge. The tornado jumped over them. They completely avoided all issues. And then other people reenact this and they actually get sucked out because there's more wind in that area of the bridge. Aside from that, weather, physics behind it, you're causing congestion on the bridge because everyone thinks it's hailing, there's a tornado, we're always trying to park our cars under the bridge, but then you realize there's a mile of cars behind you and they're stuck because you're clogging up the areas. They always say the best place, obviously, is to get off the road, find a place that's inside. If you can't, find a ditch if you see an active tornado, because you want to be at the lowest level of the ground and kind of grab onto the earth as best as possible. These are the worst case scenarios, obviously. But the best places don't be under a bridge in a storm. Be weather aware. That's this whole point of this conversation is being proactive helps us be reactive better. And we see a lot of community members who don't practice the proactive part, especially with weather. And when a flood's coming, the flood waters are rising, a lightning storm's in the area. They have a tree in the backyard that's kind of leaning towards their house. It's only the next couple storms before it falls. So being weather aware, being atmospherically aware, understanding what that's all about is something I take pride in. And very importantly, I like I mentioned, I gave a TED Talk about it a few years ago at the University of Tulsa. So it allowed me to showcase that more people don't die in those situations of tornadoes. They die from lack of information. And something I kind of want to bring up in the last minute is be safe if you do go out there. We've had some of the best storm chasers in history lose their lives due to speeding in residential neighborhoods and getting in car accidents, driving like a fool, making other storm chasers look silly. So if you're interested in it, again, go to the National Weather Service site and look up how to be a storm spotter. I encourage you to, again, practice safety. I hate being the guy, the officer that says, please be safe. But with storm season around the corner, this is a great reminder to go online, be educated. It's a super fun thing. You'll love it. The atmosphere is always changing. So lastly, I would love to finish on a note of one weather fact. There's one weather fact I really, really like is Latin words for stratus means blanket, cumulus means bubbles, nimbus means rain. So if someone says cumulonimbus, it's those bubbly rain clouds. If someone just says cumulus, it's just kind of a bubbly cloud. So taking some Latin courses, understanding the cloud types also helps you understand what's going on. One of my favorite clouds is called a mammatus cloud. They're kind of these bubbly looking clouds, and it originates from the Latin mammal, like mammus, which means mammal. So it has this curvature to it in the clouds. So mammatus clouds literally mean curvature. So they're the most beautiful things in the atmosphere. So I encourage you to go out there. I encourage you to be a storm spotter. I encourage you to help your neighbors. Thank you so much for watching. Let's talk about it, and I look forward to talking soon. And again, if you haven't already, visit us at bvctv.org. Thank you very much.